A pregnant waitress helps an injured stranger on a stormy night, unaware he's a billionaire with a connection to her tragic past. When her vengeful ex-husband returns with blackmail threats, she must choose between protecting her baby and embracing an unexpected second chance at love. But before we continue with this story, don't forget to hit subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. Monica Rivers pulled her old blue Honda into the parking lot of Joe's Diner, trying not to think about how the engine made that weird clicking sound again. At 8 months pregnant, she couldn't afford for her car to break down now, not when she was working double shifts to save every penny she could. "Morning, honey," called out Betty, the senior waitress, as Monica walked through the door. "You're looking tired. You sure you should still be working?" Monica managed a smile as she tied her apron around her growing belly. "Can't afford not to, Betty. These bills won't pay themselves." It had been 6 months since Tom, her husband of 3 years, cleaned out their joint bank account and ran off with his secretary. 6 months of crying herself to sleep, working extra shifts and trying to figure out how she was going to raise a baby on her own. But Monica wasn't the type to give up. Her mama didn't raise her that way. The day went by like any other, serving coffee, dealing with grumpy customers, and trying to stay on her feet despite her swollen ankles. By the time her shift ended at 10 p.m., dark clouds had rolled in, bringing with them a late autumn storm. "You be careful driving home now," Betty called out as Monica headed for the door. "Weather's getting nasty out there." The rain was coming down hard as Monica drove along the empty country road that led to her small rental house on the outskirts of town. Her windshield wipers could barely keep up with the downpour, and she had to squint to see the road ahead. That's when she saw him, a figure stumbling along the side of the road, barely visible in the darkness. Monica's first instinct was to keep driving. After all, what kind of fool would pick up a stranger on a night like this? But something made her slow down. In the beam of her headlights, she could see that the man's expensive-looking suit was torn and dirty. There was blood on his shirt, and he was limping badly. "Lord help me," Monica muttered, pulling over to the side of the road. She rolled down her window just enough to call out, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The man looked up, and Monica gasped. Despite the rain and blood, she could see he was handsome, with striking blue eyes that seemed to pierce right through her. He looked to be in his late 30s, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of face you might see on a magazine cover. "Please," he said, his voice weak but cultured. "I just need a ride into town. I won't hurt you." Monica's hand instinctively went to her belly as she considered her options. Her mama would say she was crazy for even thinking about helping a strange man on a dark road. But something in those blue eyes told her this was different. "Get in," she heard herself say, reaching over to unlock the passenger door. "But I'm warning you, I've got pepper spray and I know how to use it." The man managed a weak smile as he climbed into her car. "I'm Gabriel," he said softly, "and I promise you won't need that pepper spray." "I'm Monica," she replied, putting the car back in drive. "You're bleeding pretty bad. Maybe we should get you to a hospital." Gabriel shook his head quickly. "No hospitals, please. I just need somewhere to rest for a few hours. I'll be fine." Monica looked at him skeptically. "Well, I've got a first aid kit at my place. It's not much, but I can at least clean those cuts." As they drove through the rain, Monica couldn't help wondering what kind of trouble this man was. In his clothes, even torn and muddy, were clearly expensive, and there was something about the way he held himself, even injured, that spoke of money and power. "It's not much," Monica said as she pulled up to her small rental house. The paint was peeling, and the porch light flickered, but it was home. "But you're welcome to rest on my couch while I patch you up." Gabriel looked at her with those intense blue eyes. "Why are you helping me?" Monica shrugged as she helped him out of the car. "Because somebody once helped my mama when she was pregnant and alone. Sometimes a little kindness is all we've got to give." Little did Monica know that this simple act of kindness on a stormy night was about to change her life forever. Monica woke up with a start, sunlight streaming through her bedroom window. For a moment, she forgot about the strange man on her couch. Then it all came rushing back. The storm, the mysterious Gabriel, cleaning his wounds while he barely said a word. She had given him some of Tom's old clothes that he'd left behind and made up the couch with fresh sheets. The last thing she remembered was telling him to get some rest while she went to bed, her feet aching from her long shift. "Gabriel," she called out, pulling on her robe. "Are you okay out there?" No answer. Monica walked into her small living room and stopped dead in her tracks. The couch was empty, the sheets neatly folded, but that wasn't what made her gasp. Her tiny kitchen had been transformed. The old refrigerator that barely worked was gone, replaced by a gleaming new model. The cabinets were stuffed with groceries, not just basics, but fancy food she couldn't afford. Fresh fruits, expensive coffee, even steak. On the counter sat an envelope. With shaking hands, Monica opened it. Inside was more cash than she'd ever seen in her life, along with a note written in elegant handwriting. "Thank you for your kindness. I repay debts, always. G." Monica sank into a kitchen chair, her hand on her belly. "What in the world?" she whispered. A horn honked outside. Monica rushed to her window and nearly fainted. Her old Honda was gone. In its place sat a brand new SUV, exactly the kind she'd been dreaming about but could never afford. It was perfect for a baby. "This can't be real," Monica said out loud. "This kind of thing doesn't happen in real life." She was still standing there in shock when her phone rang. It was Betty from the diner. "Monica, turn on your TV right now. Channel 5. Monica fumbled for her remote and clicked on the small TV. In her living room, her jaw dropped as she saw Gabriel's face filling the screen. But this wasn't the injured man from last night. This was Gabriel Langston, the billionaire tech genius who rarely appeared in public. Tech billionaire Gabriel. "Langston survived an attempted kidnapping last night," the reporter was saying. "Sources say Mr. Langston escaped his captors during the storm, but has not revealed his whereabouts during the 8 hours he was missing." Monica sat heavily on her couch. The mysterious stranger she'd helped wasn't just some random man in trouble. He was one of the richest men in the country. Her phone started ringing non-stop. First Betty again, then other people from the diner. Soon, reporters began showing up at her door. "Miss Rivers," they called out, "is it true you helped Gabriel Langston last night? What's your relationship with the billionaire?" Monica pulled her curtains shut, her heart pounding. What had she gotten herself into? Just then, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry about the chaos. Let me fix this. G." Before Monica could respond, there was a knock at her back door. She peeked through the curtain and saw Gabriel himself standing there, looking perfectly put together in an expensive suit. No sign of last night's injuries except for a small cut above his eye. "We need to talk," he said when she opened the door. "I owe you an explanation." Monica looked at him, then at the reporters gathering at her front door. "You sure do," she said, "because right now my quiet life is turning into a circus, and I've got a baby to think about." Gabriel's face softened as he looked at her. "I know, and I'm going to make this right. You helped me when I needed it most, Monica. Now, let me help you." What Monica didn't know was that this was just the beginning. Her simple act of kindness hadn't just changed her life, it had changed Gabriel's too. And neither of them was ready for what would happen next. 3 weeks had passed since Gabriel Langston turned Monica's life upside down. The reporters had finally stopped camping outside her house, thanks to Gabriel's lawyers who'd threatened legal action against any media outlet that harassed her. Monica was back at work at the diner, though things weren't the same. Customers would stare and whisper, trying to get a glimpse of the waitress who'd helped the billionaire. Some were kind, leaving big tips and telling her she'd done a good thing. Others weren't so nice, muttering about gold diggers and opportunists. "Don't you listen to them," Betty said one morning, watching Monica wipe away tears in the break room. "They're just jealous. Besides, that man clearly cares about you." It was true, Gabriel had been different from what Monica expected. He wasn't some stuck-up rich guy throwing money around. He visited her nearly every day, usually in the evening after the diner closed. Sometimes he brought takeout, other times he just sat and talked with her. "I haven't had anyone treat me like a normal person in years," Gabriel told her one night as they sat on her porch. He'd brought Chinese food, and Monica was happily satisfying her pregnancy cravings with extra egg rolls. "Everyone wants something. From me, but not you. You helped me without knowing who I was." Monica looked at him sideways. "Well, I'm not so sure I would have let you in my car if I'd known you were a famous billionaire. Might have thought you were crazy." Gabriel laughed, a rich sound that made Monica's heart skip a beat, but she pushed that feeling away. She couldn't afford to fall for another man, especially not one like Gabriel Langston. "My board of directors is furious with me," Gabriel said, his voice turning serious. "They think I'm crazy for spending time here. Say it's bad for the company's image." Monica's heart sank. Maybe they're right. You don't need this kind of drama in your life. "Stop that," Gabriel said firmly. For the first time in years, I feel like myself again. Besides, he added with a smile, someone needs to make sure you're taking care of yourself and this little one. He nodded toward her belly. Just then, Monica's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face went pale. What's wrong? Gabriel asked, immediately concerned. It's Tom, Monica whispered. My ex. He's seen the news stories, says he's coming back to town. Gabriel's face hardened. The same Tom who cleaned out your bank account and abandoned you when you were pregnant? Monica nodded, her hands shaking. He says now that I'm friends with a billionaire, maybe we can work things out. She let out a bitter laugh. 6 months of nothing. Not even a phone call to check if his baby was okay. Now suddenly he wants to talk. Gabriel stood up, pacing the small porch. Let me handle this, one phone call and he'll never bother you again. No, Monica said firmly. I need to deal with this myself. I can't depend on you to solve all my problems. Gabriel knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. Monica, you're the strongest person I know. You've survived everything life has thrown at you, but you don't have to face everything alone anymore. Monica looked into those blue eyes that had haunted her dreams since that rainy night. Why do you care so much? Because, Gabriel said softly, that night in the rain you saved more than just my life. You saved my faith in humanity. And every day since then, you've shown me what real strength looks like. Before Monica could respond, she felt a sharp kick in her belly. Without thinking, she grabbed Gabriel's hand and placed it where the baby was moving. Gabriel's eyes widened in wonder as he felt the baby kick. For a moment, they sat there in silence, connected by this small miracle, but their peaceful moment was about to be shattered because Tom wasn't just coming back to talk, he had a plan. And he wasn't the only one who saw an opportunity in Monica's connection to Gabriel Langston. The simple life Monica had worked so hard to build was about to become even more complicated, and her growing feelings for Gabriel would be tested in ways she never expected. Tom Rivers walked into Joe's diner like he owned the place. Monica was serving coffee to the breakfast crowd when she heard Betty gasp. She turned around and there he was, her ex-husband, looking exactly like she remembered. Same charming smile, same perfectly styled hair, same expensive clothes bought with money he'd stolen from their joint account. Hello, beautiful, Tom said, sliding onto a stool at the counter. Miss me? Monica's hands shook as she set down the coffee pot. What are you doing here, Tom? Can't a man check on his wife and baby? Tom's smile didn't reach his eyes. We are still technically married, you know. Never filed those divorce papers. Betty stepped between them. You need to leave, Tom. Monica doesn't want you. Here. Actually, Tom said, pulling out some papers from his designer briefcase, I have every right to be here. As the baby's father, I'm entitled to certain rights. My lawyer drew these up. Monica felt the blood drain from her face as she looked at the custody papers Tom was holding. You can't be serious. You abandoned us. Now, honey, I just needed some time to figure things out. Tom stood up, moving closer. But when I saw you in the news with Gabriel Langston, I realized what a mistake I'd made. We can be a family again. Is there a problem here? Everyone turned to see Gabriel standing in the doorway of the diner. He was dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, but somehow still managed to look like $1 million. The breakfast crowd started whispering and pulling out their phones. Tom's smile got even bigger. Mr. Langston, I'm Tom Rivers, Monica's husband. I was just telling her how grateful I am that you've been looking out for her while I was away. Gabriel's face was stone cold as he walked over. You mean while you were hiding in Florida with your secretary and Monica's money? Tom's smile faltered. I see Monica's been telling stories. No stories, Gabriel said quietly. Just facts. Facts my private investigators had no trouble finding, including the other woman you have in Atlanta, and the gambling debts. Now it was Tom's turn to go pale, but he recovered quickly, his charm turning to spite. Well, looks like my wife has traded up. Tell me, Monica, what exactly did you do to get a billionaire's attention? The diner went dead silent. Monica felt like she'd been slapped. That's when Sheila, the cook who'd been quietly watching everything through the kitchen window, walked out with a pot of hot coffee. Oops, she said, accidentally on purpose spilling it all over Tom's expensive suit. Tom jumped up, cursing. Are you crazy, witch? This suit cost $2,000. Stolen money by stolen class, Betty muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Get out, Monica said, finding her voice at last. Get out and don't come back. And you can tell your lawyer to talk to mine. You can't afford a lawyer, Tom sneered. No, Monica agreed, but I can afford to stand up for myself. And if you try to take my baby, I'll tell everyone exactly what you did. Every penny you stole, every lie you told, how you maxed out our credit cards buying jewelry for your girlfriend while I was working doubles to pay for baby clothes. Gabriel stepped forward. I think it's time for you to leave, Mr. Rivers, unless you'd like the SEC to take a closer look at some of your more creative banking practices. Tom looked between them, his face red with rage. This isn't over, he spat out. That's my baby too, you can't keep me away. Watch me, Monica said. After Tom stormed out, the diner burst into applause. Monica didn't realize she was crying until Gabriel handed her a handkerchief. I'm sorry, she whispered. You shouldn't have to deal with my mess. Hey, Gabriel said softly, tilting her chin up. You're not a mess, you're incredible. The way you stood up to him just now, that's the Monica Rivers I've been getting to know. Strong, brave, beautiful. Their eyes met, and for a moment the whole diner seemed to fade away. Then Monica's belly kicked, making them both laugh. Your baby agrees, Gabriel said with a smile. But Monica knew this wasn't over. Tom never gave up easily, especially when his pride was hurt. And now he had even more reason to cause trouble. What she didn't know was that Tom had already set an even bigger plan in motion, one that would test not just her relationship with Gabriel, but everything she believed about love, trust, and family. The next morning's newspapers told a very different story from what had happened at the diner. Pregnant waitress in love triangle. With billionaire, screamed one headline. Abandoned wife seduces tech mogul, declared another. Someone had recorded the whole scene at the diner on their phone, but the videos making the rounds had been carefully edited to make Monica look like the villain. Don't look at that trash, Gabriel said, taking Monica's phone away as they sat in her living room. He'd brought breakfast, but Monica was too upset to eat. They're calling me a gold digger, Monica said, wiping away tears, saying I'm trying to trap you, that the baby might not even be Tom's. My own mother called this morning asking if what they're saying is true. Gabriel's jaw tightened. This is Tom's doing. He's feeding stories to the tabloids. Just then, Monica's phone rang again. It was Betty from the diner. Honey, don't come in today, Betty said, her voice worried. The parking lot is full of reporters, and, well, Mr. Johnson says maybe you should take some time off until this all blows over. Monica felt like she'd been punched in the gut. They're firing me? Not firing, just a leave of absence. Paid. Mr. Johnson wants you to know you'll still get your salary. After hanging up, Monica broke down. This is exactly what Tom wants, to ruin everything I've built, to make me desperate enough to go back to him. Gabriel paced the room, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Let me help. I can hold a press conference, tell everyone the truth. The truth? Monica laughed bitterly. That you're hanging around with a pregnant waitress because she helped you one night. That'll just make the stories worse. The truth, Gabriel said firmly, kneeling in front of her, is that I'm falling in love with you. Monica's heart stopped. What? I know it's crazy. We've only known each other a few weeks, but Monica, you're the most real thing in my life. When I'm with you, I'm not the billionaire tech genius or the media mogul. I'm just me. Before Monica could respond, her phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number, with a photo attached. Her hands shook as she opened it. The photo was of her and Gabriel, taken through her living room window just moments ago. Under it was a message. How much do you think the papers would pay for proof that the billionaire's been sleeping with a married woman? Back off or everyone sees these. He's having me watched, Monica whispered, showing Gabriel the phone. Gabriel's face darkened with anger. That's it. I'm calling my security team. We'll have you moved to my penthouse where it's safe. No. Monica stood up, protective hands on her belly. Don't you see? That's exactly what Tom wants. To make me look like your mistress, to force me to depend on you. He knows that if he can make me look bad enough, no judge will give me full custody of the baby. Then what do you want to do? Gabriel asked softly. Monica took a deep breath. I need to leave town for a while. Go somewhere quiet where I can have this baby in peace. Monica, please. I care about you too, Gabriel. Maybe more than I should. But right now I need to think about my baby. I can't bring a child into all this chaos and scandal. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. I have a house, a small place up in the mountains, that no one knows about. Not even my board of directors. It's where I go when I need to escape. It's yours if you want it. I couldn't. Please, Gabriel said. Let me do this one thing. Not because I'm trying to control you, But because he swallowed hard, because I can't bear the thought of you going through this alone. Monica looked into those blue eyes that had captured her heart on that rainy night. She saw no pity there, no attempt to control her, just love, pure and simple. What she didn't know was that Tom had more than just photos. He had a secret that would shake both Monica and Gabriel to their cores, a secret that would test their growing love in ways neither of them could imagine. And in the mountains, where Monica thought she would find peace, she would instead find herself facing the biggest decision of her life. Gabriel's idea of a small place in the mountains turned out to be a beautiful log cabin overlooking a pristine lake. It was secluded enough that no photographers could find it, but close enough to town that Monica wouldn't have to worry about her upcoming doctor's appointments. Mrs. Parker lives just down the road, Gabriel explained as he helped Monica settle in. She's been taking care of this place for years. She can drive you anywhere you need to go. Mrs. Parker turned out to be a kind-faced woman in her 60s who took one look at Monica's pregnant belly and immediately went into grandmother mode. Don't you worry about a thing, dear. I've helped bring half the babies in this county into the world. You're in good hands. For the first time in weeks, Monica felt like she could breathe. No reporters, no whispers, no Tom lurking around corners. Just peace and quiet. Gabriel visited when he could, usually flying in by helicopter on weekends. They spent their time taking walks by the lake, playing board games and talking about everything and nothing. Monica found herself falling deeper in love with him, even though she tried to fight it. My board's going crazy, Gabriel told her one evening as they sat on the deck watching the sunset. They think I'm having some kind of breakdown, spending so much time away from the office. Maybe they're right, Monica said softly. Your company needs you. Gabriel turned to look at her. You know what I realized? In 20 years of building my company, I've never taken a real vacation, never had anyone to take one with. Before Monica could respond, her phone buzzed. She'd kept it turned off most of the time, only checking it occasionally for messages from her mother or Betty. But this message made her blood run cold. It was from Tom. Found something interesting in your old medical records, sweetheart. Wonder what your billionaire boyfriend would think about it. Monica, what's wrong? Gabriel asked, seeing her face. Nothing, she said quickly, deleting the message. Just my mom checking in. But that night, after Gabriel had flown back to the city, Monica couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what Tom might have found, about the secret she'd been keeping for so long, the one thing she hadn't told Gabriel. The next morning, Mrs. Parker found her crying in the kitchen. Now, the older woman said, sitting down beside her. I've lived long enough to know that tears like that aren't just about hormones. Want to talk about it? Monica found herself telling Mrs. Parker everything about her marriage to Tom, about the dark times she'd never told anyone about, and about the secret that could ruin everything with Gabriel. 5 years ago, Monica whispered, before I met Tom, I was engaged to someone else. His name was David, and he was Gabriel's younger brother. Mrs. Parker's eyes widened. Gabriel's brother? Monica nodded. He died in a car accident 2 weeks before our wedding. I was driving. The papers said it was an accident, but some people blamed me. Gabriel probably doesn't even know I was the one involved. He was in Europe when it happened, and the family kept everything very quiet. Oh, honey, Mrs. Parker took her hand. You have to tell him. How can I? Monica's voice broke. He'll hate me. And now Tom knows somehow. He'll use it to destroy everything. That man doesn't know the first thing about love, Mrs. Parker said firmly. But Gabriel does. I've seen the way he looks at you. Give him a chance. Before Monica could respond, she felt a sharp pain in her belly, then another. Mrs. Parker, she gasped. I think the baby's coming. But you're not due for 3 more weeks. Tell that to the baby, Monica said through gritted teeth. Mrs. Parker sprang into action, calling the local doctor. But a storm was moving in, making the mountain roads dangerous. We'll never make it to the hospital, Mrs. Parker said, looking worried. We'll have to do this here. As the contractions got stronger, Monica realized she had to make a choice. She had to tell Gabriel the truth before Tom did. With shaking hands, she picked up her phone to call him. But what she didn't know was that Tom had already made that call, and Gabriel was learning the truth about his brother's death in the worst possible way, even as Monica fought to bring new life into the world. Thunder cracked outside the mountain cabin as Monica fought through another contraction. Mrs. Parker had transformed the living room into a makeshift delivery room with clean sheets and hot water at the ready. The doctor's trying to get through on the emergency road, Mrs. Parker said. wiping Monica's forehead with a cool cloth. But this storm isn't making it easy. Meanwhile, in his city office, Gabriel sat in shocked silence, staring at the documents. Tom had just shown him. Old newspaper clippings, police reports, and photographs spread across his desk told the story he'd never known. How his younger brother David had died in a car accident with his fiancée behind the wheel. The fiancée whose name was Monica Rivers. "I just thought you should know the truth," Tom said, his fake concern not quite hiding his satisfaction, "about the kind of woman you're getting involved with. The kind of woman who killed your brother and never told you." Gabriel's hands shook as he picked up a photo. It showed a younger Monica in a hospital bed, bruised and bandaged. She looked so small, so broken, just like she had the night he met her in the rain. His phone rang. Monica's number. He stared at it, not sure if he could answer. "Aren't you going to get that?" Tom asked with a smirk. Maybe she's finally ready to confess. Back at the cabin, Monica cried out in pain as another contraction hit. "He's not answering," she sobbed, still clutching her phone. "I have to tell him. I have to explain about David." "Focus on your breathing, dear," Mrs. Parker said firmly. "One problem at a time." The storm grew worse. Trees bent in the wind, and the power flickered ominously. Monica's labor was progressing faster than anyone had expected. In the city, Gabriel finally picked up his phone, but not to call Monica. Instead, he called someone else, his family's old lawyer, Richard Sterling. "Tell me everything you know about David's accident," Gabriel demanded. "The truth, not what the papers said." Richard was quiet for a moment. "I wondered when this would come up. Your father wanted to protect you, kept you away in Europe during the worst of it, but there's something you should know about that night." As Richard talked, Gabriel's face went from anger to shock to horror. The true story was nothing like what Tom had presented. "Dear God," Gabriel whispered, "I have to get to her." But when he tried to call Monica back, the calls wouldn't go through. The storm had knocked out cell service to the mountain. "Looks like your girlfriend's ghosting you," Tom said, still lingering in Gabriel's office. "Just like she ghosted your family after David's death." Gabriel stood up slowly, his face dark with anger. "Get out." "Excuse me? I said get out." Gabriel's voice thundered through the office. "You tried to use my brother's death to manipulate me, to hurt Monica. Did you really think I wouldn't find out the truth?" Tom's smug expression faltered. "What truth? She killed your brother." "No," Gabriel said quietly. "She almost died trying to save him. Richard just told me everything. How David had been drinking that night. How Monica tried to take his keys, but he insisted on driving. How she jumped in the car to try to stop him and ended up being the one blamed when the car crashed." Tom backed away. "You're lying. The police reports show David's blood alcohol level, the witness statements about their fight over the keys, and something else. Evidence that someone paid off reporters to slant the story against Monica. Someone who worked for my father's company." Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "Someone who's been waiting 5 years to use this information. How long have you known, Tom? How long have you been planning to use this against her?" Before Tom could answer, Gabriel's assistant burst in. "Sir, there's an emergency call from the mountains. It's about Monica." Gabriel's heart stopped. "What's wrong?" "She's in labor, sir, but the storm, they can't get a doctor up there. The emergency helicopter can't fly in this weather." Gabriel looked at the storm raging outside his office windows, then at Tom's now pale face, then at the scattered documents about his brother's death. In that moment, he knew exactly what he had to do, but could he get to Monica in time? And would she ever forgive him for doubting her, even for a moment? "I can't seriously be thinking of driving up there in this storm," Tom said, watching Gabriel grab his coat. "You'll kill yourself." Gabriel turned to him with cold eyes. "Like you care. You're just afraid I'll get there in time to tell Monica the truth about how you've been planning this for years." "I don't know what you're talking about," Tom stammered, but his face had gone pale. "Really? Then why did Richard find payments from you to a reporter from 5 years ago? The same reporter who wrote those stories blaming Monica for David's death." Gabriel stepped closer. "You knew about her connection to my family before you even married her, didn't you?" Tom backed away. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can. Richard's sending everything to the police right now. Your long game just backfired, Tom." Leaving Tom sputtering in his office, Gabriel rushed to the elevator. His assistant ran after him with a stack of papers. "Sir, the board meeting. The merger papers need your signature today. The company will survive without my signature for a few hours," Gabriel said, hitting the lobby button. "Monica might not. Meanwhile, at the cabin, Monica was fighting through the hardest contractions yet. The power had gone out, leaving them with only battery-powered lanterns for light. The babies. "Coming too fast," Mrs. Parker said, trying to hide her worry. "And she's running a fever." Monica gripped the older woman's hand. Tell me about when you had your children." Mrs. Parker understood what Monica was doing, trying to distract herself from the pain and fear. "Well, my Jimmy was born on a night just like this. Middle of a storm, no doctor in sight. My husband was away on business, so it was just me and my neighbor Martha. On the mountain road, Gabriel gripped his steering wheel as his four-wheel drive fought through the wind and rain. He'd already had 3 near misses with fallen trees. His phone was useless, no signal up here. All he could think about was Monica, alone and scared, probably thinking he had abandoned her after learning about David. "I'm coming," he whispered. "Just hold on." Back at the cabin, Monica's fever was getting worse. She drifted in and out of consciousness, memories mixing with reality. "David," she mumbled, "I'm sorry. I tried to stop you." "Shh," Mrs. Parker soothed, pressing a cool cloth to her forehead. "Save your strength. Tell Gabriel." Monica's eyes fluttered. "Tell him I never stopped feeling guilty. That's why I never told him. Couldn't bear to see the same hate in his eyes that I saw in their father's." "You can tell him yourself," Mrs. Parker said firmly. "He'll be here." But privately, she was getting seriously worried. Monica's blood pressure was too high, and the baby's heartbeat, which she could feel with her experienced hands, seemed irregular. Suddenly, there was a loud crash outside. For a moment, Mrs. Parker thought it was just more thunder. Then she heard someone pounding on the door. "Monica!" Gabriel's voice carried through the storm. "Monica, I'm here!" Mrs. Parker rushed to let him in. Gabriel stood there soaking wet, a small cut on his forehead where a tree branch had caught him. "Thank God," Mrs. Parker said, pulling him inside. "She needs you." Gabriel ran to Monica's side, taking her burning hot hand in his. "Monica, baby, can you hear me?" Monica's eyes opened slightly. "Gabriel, I'm so sorry about David." "No," Gabriel said firmly, kissing her hand. "I'm the one who's sorry. I know the truth now about everything. About how brave you were that night, trying to save him. About how Tom used it against you. You don't hate me? I could never hate you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Now we're going to get through this together." "Okay." Monica managed a weak smile before another contraction hit. This one was different. Monica screamed in pain, and Mrs. Parker's face went white. "Something's wrong," the older woman said. "The baby's in distress. We need a doctor now." Gabriel looked at Monica's pale face, then at the storm outside. He had finally found her, finally told her the truth. He couldn't lose her now. What he didn't know was that help was already on the way, from the last person anyone would have expected. The wind howled outside the cabin as Monica fought through another devastating contraction. Gabriel held her hand while Mrs. Parker moved efficiently around them, doing everything she could with their limited supplies. "We need to get her to a hospital," Mrs. Parker said, her voice tight with worry. "The baby's heartbeat is getting weaker." Suddenly, they heard the sound of an engine outside. A moment later, someone was pounding on the door. "Police! Open up!" Gabriel rushed to the door. There, standing in the rain, was Betty from the diner, accompanied by 2 police officers, and most importantly, a doctor. "Betty," Gabriel gasped. "How did you—" "No time for explanations," Betty said, pushing past him. "This baby's coming now." The doctor, a young woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, quickly took charge of the situation. "I'm going to need hot water, clean towels, and everyone who's not directly helping to clear the room." As the police officers helped set up emergency lighting and medical equipment they'd brought, Betty explained what had happened. Tom came to the diner, drunk and ranting about how his plan had failed, said he'd been plotting this for years, how he'd married Monica because he knew about her. "Connection to your family." Betty's eyes flashed with anger. He thought he was being clever, but he didn't realize Sheila was recording everything on her phone. "The minute he left, we took it to the police." "That's not all," one of the police officers added. "Once we started digging, we found evidence that Mr. Rivers had been embezzling money from his previous employers. He's been running this same scheme for years, finding women with connections to wealthy families, marrying them, then trying to extort money. He's been arrested," the other officer said. "He won't be bothering Ms. Rivers anymore." A scream from Monica cut through their conversation. Dr. Chen's face was serious as she examined her patient. "The baby's in distress, and Monica's blood." Pressure is dangerously high. We need to act fast. She looked at Gabriel. There's a risk to both mother and child. I need someone to make medical decisions if Monica becomes unconscious. Gabriel started to speak, but Monica grabbed his hand. Wait, she gasped between contractions. Betty, my witness. Betty stepped forward, pulling out papers from her purse. Already taken care of, honey. Signed by a judge an hour ago. Your divorce from Tom is final. You're free. Monica managed a weak smile before another contraction hit. This one was different. Her whole body went rigid, and the monitors Dr. Chen had set up started beeping frantically. She's crashing, Dr. Chen shouted. I need everyone out except Mrs. Parker and Mr. Langston. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Dr. Chen worked with focused intensity, giving rapid-fire instructions to Mrs. Parker, while Gabriel held Monica's hand, whispering words of encouragement. Stay with me, baby, he pleaded. We've come too far to lose you now. Monica's eyes fluttered open, finding his. Gabriel, if something happens, promise me. Nothing's going to happen, he said firmly. You're the strongest person I know, remember? You survived David's accident. You survived, Tom. You're going to survive this. But if I don't, Monica's voice was barely a whisper. Promise you'll tell our baby about everything, about that night in the rain, about how love can come when you least expect it. You can tell her yourself, Gabriel said, tears in his eyes. Because I'm going to marry you, Monica Rivers, if you'll have me. Before Monica could respond, her body was seized by the strongest contraction yet. Dr. Chen's voice cut through everything. This is it. Push, Monica, push. What happened next would become part of local legend. How, in the middle of the worst storm in years, as thunder shook the mountains and lightning split the sky, a new life came into the world. How love and determination proved stronger than all the schemes and lies that had tried to destroy it. But most importantly, what happened next would change everything, not just for Monica and Gabriel, but for everyone who believed in second chances. 1 year later, the garden of Gabriel's mountain cabin was transformed with white flowers and twinkling lights. The same cabin that had witnessed so much drama now hosted a celebration of love and new beginnings. Mama! Mama! Little Hope Langston bounced in Betty's arms, reaching for Monica as she stepped onto the back deck in her wedding dress. At 11 months old, Hope was the spitting image of her mother, with the same determined spirit that had helped bring her safely into the world during that stormy night. There's my angel, Monica said, taking her daughter and covering her face with kisses. Hope was dressed in a tiny white dress that matched her mother's, with a crown of baby's breath in her dark curls. Now, don't you go crying and ruining your makeup, Betty warned, dabbing at her own eyes. Mrs. Parker spent an hour getting you ready. Speaking of which, Monica smiled, where is my fairy godmother? Right here, dear. Mrs. Parker appeared with a bouquet of wildflowers, just making sure everything's perfect. It's not every day we host a mountain wedding for a billionaire and his waitress. Monica laughed. Former waitress. The children's hospital keeps me pretty busy these days. It was true. After Hope's dramatic birth, Monica had used her experience to help other mothers in crisis. With Gabriel's support, she'd started a foundation that provided medical care and support for single mothers and their children. The same doctor who had saved her and Hope's lives, Dr. Chen, now ran the medical program. The reporters are all staying in town like we asked, Betty reported, though they're dying to get pictures of the mysterious mountain wedding. After everything that had happened, Monica and Gabriel had decided to keep their wedding small and private. Just family and close friends, the people who had stood by them through the darkest times. Is he here? Monica asked softly. Mrs. Parker nodded. In the front row. He wouldn't miss this for the world. Tears filled Monica's eyes as she thought of Gabriel's father. The man who had once blamed her for his younger son's death had become one of her strongest supporters. After the truth about David's accident came out, he had sought Monica out to apologize. Now he doted on Hope like any proud grandfather would. Time to go, honey, Betty said, taking Hope back into her arms. Your future husband is waiting. As the music started playing, Monica took a deep breath. Through the glass doors, she could see Gabriel standing at the makeshift altar, looking handsome in his suit. Their eyes met, and just like that first night in the rain, everything else faded away. Monica's walk down the aisle was accompanied by the sound of birdsong and a gentle mountain breeze. When she reached Gabriel, he took her hands in his blue eyes shining with love. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we are gathered here today not just to witness a wedding, but to celebrate a miracle that began with an act of kindness on a stormy night." As they exchanged their vows, Monica thought about all the twists and turns that had brought them to this moment, how the worst times in her life had led her to the best, how love had found her when she least expected it. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister said finally. "You may kiss the bride." Gabriel pulled Monica close, whispering, "I love you, Mrs. Langston," before kissing her to the cheers of their gathered family and friends. At the reception, as they danced under the stars, Hope sleeping peacefully in Mrs. Parker's arms nearby, Gabriel asked, "Any regrets?" Monica thought about everything they'd been through. The pain, the fear, the joy, the love. "Just one," she said with a smile. "I wish I'd picked up that handsome stranger in the rain sooner." Gabriel laughed, pulling her closer. "Well, we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." As they danced, the mountain air filled with music and laughter, Monica knew this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning built on kindness, strengthened by adversity, and blessed by love. And somewhere, she thought, David was smiling down on them, happy that his brother had finally found the same kind of love he had once known. They say that every great love story has its share of drama and pain, but the greatest love stories are the ones that remind us that after every storm, there's a chance for sunshine. That sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as strangers on dark roads, and that love, real love, can heal even the deepest wounds and create the most unexpected families. For Monica and Gabriel, their story would always begin with that rainy night and a simple act of kindness. But now, surrounded by the family they had built, not just Hope, but Betty, Mrs. Parker, and all the others who had become part of their journey, they knew their best chapters were still to come. The end.